Welcome to the Milsurf Mike channel. I'm going to cross the Instagram gun guy and YouTube gun tuber streams just a little bit. There was an Instagrammer named Milsurf Underground who issued a French Week challenge or hashtag French Week, so I participated in that. I showed my French collection, pieces of that, all 7 days. I basically did it in rifle pistol pairs. So, on Instagram, I went chronologically in reverse. So I'll just figure I'd show them here too as well. Now I've made videos on most of these. At the end of the video, I'll put a card of my French firearms playlist. So go ahead and click on that if you want to learn a little bit more about them. But I'll also put links in the card above. So anyway, I'll go ahead and go forward in chronological order. First off, I have my Lebel rifle, my Lebel 1886 M93. It was made at MAP, which is a factory I think was closed down, and it was opened up to make barrels. It has an 1888 date on it, and I've always been skeptical of that 1888 date, basically because the guy I bought it from told me to be skeptical of that 1888 date. I bought it from a U.S. vet who was just back from Afghanistan, and I think I got this in 2013. He had a lot more French rifles than I, was just started. I was just getting started on getting some French stuff back then. I wish I would have got some more because he had Gras, and I think he had Chassepots. He had a bunch sent back over from Afghanistan. So, but the 1888, many of the vendors over there know about our pre-1898 antique law, and just so they can sell it to American servicemen, they wanted to make sure that that date was prior to 1898. So 1s and 8s were the easiest for them to stamp. When I showed this on the French group on Facebook, Ian McCollum talked about it a little bit, and I said, yeah, I shared that on Instagram talking about the 1888, but I'm not sure if that's FUD lore or not. And he goes, well, it isn't because I'm the one who actually wrote that. So I guess I should have, looked at this book a little bit before I made the post, at least on Facebook. Next up was my Berthier model 1907/15, and it has the M16 magazine on it. The Berthier was basically made as for colonial troops, and it was supposed to be kind of a colonial stopgap. Well, since the Lebel had a tube magazine, 8-round tube magazine, but once you empty that, it's a lot harder to reload that than a clip-fed system, which with in-block clips into the Berthier magazine, is a lot quicker, even though it was only 3 rounds. Well, the update was for the updated magazine took 5 rounds, still with an in-block clip, and it added a trapdoor on the magazine so there wouldn't be a big hole at the bottom for dirt to get in. Next up was my Berthier model M16 carbine. I think I showed that in my Berthier video, but I didn't fire it because it does need a new follower in the magazine. I do have that follower, I just haven't taken it apart to replace it yet. Next up on the rifles is the MOS 36. It was also supposed to be a stopgap between everything that they had and the supposed semi-auto rifle that was supposed to come, and it fired a the 7.5 millimeter cartridge, which is a hell of a lot better than the 8 millimeter Lebel. It ended up being more frontline because we know what happened in 1940. The semi-auto really didn't happen because at that point it is either hidden well or the Germans didn't like it. I tend to believe that it was hidden well because the Germans used everything in lands that they occupied, and they were not going to turn their nose up at a very well-made semi-auto rifle. And the MOS semi-auto rifle is very. If they would have made it, it would have been much better than the Garand in World War II. Next up, I had my SVW MB K98K. That was produced when the French occupied the Mauser factory, and I did a video on that, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. And finally, I had my MOS model 1949/56. Great semi-auto rifle that fired the 7.5 millimeter round. It finally got got around to making the semi-auto in 1949, and then in 1956, the main addition would be the grenade launcher on it. So those were my rifles. Before I get to the pistols, I'm going to issue a challenge to you. If you have a YouTube channel, a GunTube channel, give me a video response showing me some of your French firearms, your French collection. I'd like to see them, and there's a lot of people out there that like to see them. So, if you have French firearms, send me out a video response. Next up, my handguns. I have the Model 1873 revolver. This is probably my most recent addition to my French collection, even though it's my oldest piece in the French collection. It's a Chamelot Delvine double-action revolver. It was adopted at the same time that the Colt single-action Army was here. So the double action's a lot nicer, but the .45 long Colt packed a lot more punch than the round in the Chamelot Delvine. So, depending on what you want to use it for, you can decide which was better. Now, if you want to shoot a mummy in the face, get two of the 1873s and you're set. Next up would be my Model 1892 revolver. Made at Saint Etienne. I did a nice long video on that. So just check that out. I'll 8mm Lebel, well, they called it Lebel, but the 8mm cartridge, which was very underwhelming. That's probably really the only fault of it. Besides that, it was a really good revolver. Next up would be my Ruby. It's made in Spain. After the war started and really didn't go the way that they thought it was going to go, they needed more handguns for the trench warfare, but Saint Etienne was needed to produce rifles, not handguns. So, they looked to find anything they could, and luckily there was a neutral country with a large border with them who had a very vigorous firearms industry in Ibar, however you pronounce it. So, got the Ruby pistol, did a video on that. The only one besides the 1873, the only one I don't have a video on is my MAB Brevet. It needs some work. It needs probably some new springs so it can fire. And I really didn't have a good rifle to pair it with on the Instagram post. So I didn't show that off except for when I did the post with all the French firearms. Next up was my 1935A, 1935S pistols. Did a really long, 20-minute long video on them. Showed the differences. Showed, why there's two different pistols. And at first you're wondering, why the hell did they choose these over the high power? But you can also see that, especially the 1935A is a great shooting pistol. It's just that 32 French long round is kind of weird. But, eventually it's Charles Petter who had the patent, who designed it, and, he went back to Switzerland and made the P49 and the SIG P210 from that. So, that basically became a very well-respected pistol once Petter went back to Switzerland. But it seemed like the French preferred the 1935S overall because that's what they produced more of. They produced a lot of them after the war. Now, if you have one that has a Waffenamt on it, that's definitely fake because there weren't very many of them produced before the war, and there weren't any of them produced during the war. 1935As may have Waffenamts on them. But as I said, the 1935S was probably what they preferred because they basically bulked that up to make the model 1950 when they finally adopted a pistol that didn't fire a whack-ass caliber. They finally adopted a 9mm Luger caliber pistol. My model 1950 or Mac 50 is basically probably my most expensive handgun actually because there's not very many of them in the United States. Most of them are either Vietnam War bringbacks from when the French shipped them to Indochina, or there was for a short time, they were sold in the U.S. for a short time from American Rifleman in June 1961. Those will say France on them. Mine does not say France on it, so mine was a Vietnam War bringback. And one final one that I need to mention, of course, is my P38 Walther, my Grey Ghost. I did a video on that. Same story with that as with the K98K Mauser. So, if you want to learn more about these firearms, please check out my French firearm playlist. It'll either be here or there. I'm not sure where my direction is. Please join the GOA. Get $5 off in your membership in the link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.